Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to look at challenge number 8 on Frosty Friday, which is about StreamLit. So StreamLit, or more like Snowflake StreamLit integration. So for anyone who is not familiar with StreamLit, StreamLit is an open source Python library that makes it easy to create and share custom web apps for machine learning or data science, right? You have Snowflake, that's your database that stores object tables. But with the integration with Streamlit, it allows you to seamlessly bring real-time streaming data from different sources into your Snowflake object tables. So this means that you can analyze and visualize your data in real time using Streamlit's intuitive web app interface. Directly accessing and manipulating the data stored in Snowflake. It's like, just think of it as having a magic bridge between your Snowflake database and Streamlit's powerful visualization tool, right? Making it more effortless to explore and understand your data like never before. So, looking at this question, they want to build out something like this, right? So the first thing what I would do is, I think looking into, let me just quickly read the description here. Why is this of the time of writing? The Snowflake Streamlit integration isn't here yet. FrostyFriday sees that as only more reason to get ahead of the curve and start developing those Streamlit skills. While Streamlit is Python based and we encourage you to learn Python, this challenge is Python optional. The skeleton script below should mean you can do this challenge without any Python knowledge. For a guide on getting started, head over here. So if you needed help on looking at the Streamlit documentation as such, you can just press on this hyperlink here. So what's the challenge? Well, a company has a nice and simple payments fact table that you can find here. So the next hyperlink, it gives you a CSV file of payments. So please make sure you download the file and create a staging area in order to put your file into the staging area and create a table in Snowflake. They want Frosty data to help them by ingesting the data and creating the below line chart. So when it comes to a question like these, Streamlit questions, the first thing I would do is look at the result set here, right? So let me see what this entails. So looking at this, so they want us to build something like this, right? First thing I would do is observe the result. You have the title, right? Payments in 2021, followed by two sliders, right? You have one slider for minimum date and then other slider for maximum date, right? As you can see here. And I think you can slide across in order to see what your data looks like, right? If I just slide this bit down the middle, I will have a different picture, right? Down below here, or different type of line chart. And your x-axis is representing the month, and the y-axis represent the amount spent, right? Um, Going back to the question below, I can see we have given 5 set of instructions. The script must not expose passwords as this would be very unsafe. Instead, it should use Streamlit secrets. The title must be payments to 2021. It must have a minimal date filter which specifies the earliest date a user can select. By default, this should be set to the earliest date possible. It must have a maximum date filter which specifies the latest date a user can select. By default, this should be set to the latest date possible. It should have a line chart with dates on the x-axis and amount on the y-axis. The data should be aggregated at the weekly level. Okay, this should be aggregated at the weekly level. So one thing for sure is we need to really dig deep into data and probably use some date manipulation in order to get the weekly level, aggregated, right? So what else is in there? We have the skeleton script for non-Python users, right? So looking at the script, first I can see is you of course import your libraries. You have Streamlit, Pandas, and Snowflake connector, right? And looking through, I mean, before moving on to the function, we can see your credentials, right? More like your config file. And if you see here, this is done using secrets.toml, right here. You can see right here, right? This is a file that can be denoted as, a plain text format that organizes data into key value pairs, for example, right? Making it more human readable and writable. That's where you store your configurations. For example, your user, passwords, your account, even the name of the wells, etc., right? But but to be fair, I'm not going to create a secrets.toml file because Snowflake has its own inbuilt Streamlit feature anyway, right? So I don't need to create a separate file to store all your credentials. And moving on, if you see onto the first function, we can see the first function is called load data because reason why this is the first function because it starts with def, right? So this load data creates a function to connect to your Snowflake instance, right? You can clearly see that you just execute a bunch of queries here, right? And even if this function entails to return a data frame, you see here it says returns payments underscore df, right? So this is a part of a data frame. So I'm not going to create, for example, a table using Snowpark code, right? Or a Python worksheet in order to create a table. What I would do, or what I would advise you to do, is to create it using a SQL worksheet on Snowflake. So I would have all the table creations using SQL, and then we use Streamlit application, right? The Streamlit app, more like a Python worksheet, to create your data frames. So we would invoke the table creation into our Python worksheet, right? So bear in mind that the load data function is using a decorator. If you see here where it says at st.cache, this is a decorator, right? In Streamlit, because this st.cache, what it does is to cache the result of a function, right? Which helps in, let's say, optimizing the performance of the application by preventing, let's say, unnecessary re-execution of the function, right? So having add st.cache indicates that its return value will be cached, right? So in essence, when the function is being called for the first time, Streamlit will execute the function and cache its return value. So if the function is being called again, Streamlit will return the cached result without re-executing the function, just to make sure to avoid redundant computation in Streamlit applications, right? So this is a good thing because we're not dealing with, let's say, real-time data here, right? Our data doesn't really get updated frequently. It's just a sample CSV file we're working on. So if it's like a static file, why not use a decorator, right? Because we don't want to re-execute this function multiple times because the result set is always going to be the same anyway, right? So it's best to have st.cache. And what's next here? Looking down below, we can see two functions here, right? We have one for minimum date and the other one for the maximum date, right? So the minimum date says it returns the minimum or the earliest date present in the dataset and vice versa for the maximum date, right? Just a simple return statement, nothing else. And then we will use the app creation, right? In order to create all the front end stuff, yeah, such as creating a title, creating the sliders, line charts, etc., right? This is how I would see it on how I would structure my Python code in order to build a result set, right? You have, for example, the load data function. Make sure you have a table that you can work on in order to get the minimum date and the maximum date. And then once that's done, we're going to use the app creation function to invoke what's been created and build a line chart on top of that, right? So yeah, that's how I would see it. And yeah, I mean, let's dive in and see how we can leverage this integration. So going back to Snowflake, first thing I would do is I've already created my state. So I'm just going to say week 8, week 8 state. So I've already got my payments.csv file in here, right? And then what I'm going to do is make sure you have, download the file and create the stage and make sure you got your file within the staging area, right? Next, what I would do is I would create a file format, right? So I'm just gonna do something like this. CSV, let's call it CSV here. Skip header equals 1. And this is optional, but I'm going to put this down here just in case there are like some funny characters in the Excel sheet. Let's gonna do put down something like this, right? Okay, I've got my file format created. So what I would do is I would see the data types, right? And I would also see how many columns that particular file exists, right? So the first thing I would do is what I normally do to for all the demos is using the infer schema method, right? Location, UK stage, file format, so CSV, then files. So the files here is called payments. Don't forget the literals of payments.csv, and I'm going to do something like this. Check for any errors. Okay, so okay, should be an arrow sign. Okay, let's see. So this contains 4 columns here, right? So we have a type of number, date, like a timestamp in here, text, and number, right? So let's see. Let's just go deeper into the file, right? So let's just do this. I'm just gonna say file row number, metadata, file name. So we know there are 4 columns, something like this, from week 8 stage. Let's see. Again, when we set this a filter saying metadata file row number equals 1, this bit are your columns, right? But I can see that the first, I mean, we don't even know what the first column is because it's not giving us a date, right? So it's null. I guess this is going to be your ID or something. Payment date, yeah, card type, and amount spent. I think back on the question, it didn't really mention anything about the card type. So I think the only columns that we care about is payment date and amount spent, right? Fairly, okay. All right then. So what I would do is, okay, looking at this, I would create a table, right? And I would only create 3 columns because I think this is probably optional, but not really sure if I need a column for this one, right? Because it's set off null, right? So I would just create a table for those 3 columns here. So the first thing I would do is place table payments. So what I would do here is I wouldn't create this, you create a table first, you have the columns, and then what I would do is use the copy into statement. I just want to create everything with one single go, right? You just do something like this. So $2, so in here. So we know this is of type, let's see, 2 is timestamp, right? So I'm just gonna do something like this, timestamp NTZ, and then it's gonna say payment date. I think it's called payment date, right? Not this one. Yes, payment date. Now we'll do similar to this one here. I would call this as text, as card type, and then the last one is going to be a number, right? Number as amount spent. Yeah, something like this. So this is how I would create a table. So I don't even need to create a copy into statement below, right? I can just do everything on one single go. So again, just copy this and paste in here. Don't forget the @ sign. And then below, just going to open up bracket, say file, save file format, CSV, right? Okay, we got something like this. Okay, let's see. Payments. Okay, we got the payment date, card type, and amount spent, right? So there are roughly 13,000 records in here. Okay, cool. Now, looking back to this, what do we exactly need, right? So going back to the question, the title must be Payments 2021. Okay, then that means, looking back at the data, do you have anything to 2021? I think there's a bunch of, let me quickly see something. Let's see. Payment date equals 2021. Okay, so it's gonna be, okay, this data has 2021 data anyway. Okay, not really sure why I need to filter this one, but just make sure that I think this filter is, I mean, quite optional because I think I did get the same result, but it's best to, narrow down the data because we're working only with payments that are 2021, right? So what I'm gonna do here is, okay, we got this. Next, I would say, and let me just write down the columns, So what we'll do is payment date, right? And we should call it something like this, payment date, card type. Not really sure if I need card type, but okay. And then we need, what does it say? And if you go back to the question, it says we need to should have a line with the x-axis, not amount of y-axis. The data should be at a weekly level. So if it's a weekly level, so what we do is let's see. Okay, I need to get the weekly level in here, right? So in order to do that, we use date, some type of date manipulation we could do, right? I'm thinking to use this truncate function. So we'll do, let's say, week, comma, I'm just gonna do payment date, right? Something like this. I'm just gonna call this payment week, right? Something like that. All right. Data. I'm just gonna put date underscore. Okay, we got. Okay, this is the start of the week. Okay. Should I have it like this? Let me see. Payment day. We have all this timestamp NTZ in here, right? I think we don't. I don't think we care about the time, right? It's more. Let me see. Yeah, it's just on the date level. So I'm just gonna say date as payment date, and I would have. I think this is something like this, right? Let me just keep it as this, and then I will do. Let me quickly check something. Can I do something like this? Ooh. Let me see. Oh, this works as well. Okay. Let's go back to the question. Okay, yeah, I think we narrowed down as much as possible. I think I'm happy that we got something like this. All right, cool. Now, what I'm going to do is, you can do two things here. You can create a table on top of that, or for this challenge, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a Python worksheet or like a StreamLit app, and I want to write a secret code within the Python worksheet, just for you guys to understand how this exactly works. So moving on, so we have the payments table, that's all good. So what I want you to do is go on the left hand side, where it says worksheet, under below it says StreamLit. So I want you to guys press on StreamLit. So once you click on StreamLit, you will see something like this, right? What you can also do is you can just name this as payments 2021. This is what I've done, right? So we can get an indication that this app is for payments 2021, right? So looking into this, let's see. uh, this has been, it's basically, this is an example, right? Okay. So once you clicked on Streamlit, so if you see here on the left hand side is a Streamlit. Once you clicked on Streamlit, you will get to see something like this, right? This is an already built Streamlit app, like for an example. So I think this is basically like a little template on how exactly this web application has been built, right? So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to delete the whole thing. I think best what you're going to do is keep the libraries, but delete the whole thing, right? Something like this, right? So you just run this. So this disappears, right? Because of course I've deleted the whole code in here, right? So the first thing I would do is, again, I would import the libraries, right? It's been already imported for you, right? So we have streamed it and we have this get active session. So the funny thing is with this get active session, so what I can do here, if I just show you, so if I just call this a session equal get active session, right? So if you do a print statement, right? First run, you won't get to see anything, right? So here, because this is more like a Streamlit application in a Python, right? So in order to see the result of session, you don't say print. You say st, right? Streamlit dot write, and then you say session, right? Something like this. This is basically your print statement. If you want to debug your Streamlit code in here, try use st.write session, right? If you just run this, you can see, okay, I've got an error here. Let me see. Import get active session. Oh, sorry. Should be like this. Just don't forget the parentheses at the back. Yeah, you can see here. Okay, I'm currently under account admin. I've got my database called Frosty schema public, and I'm using the compute underscore WH warehouse. So funny thing about this here, and why is this also important is because if you doing this on, Jupyter Notebook, PyCharm, or VS Code, you need to mention, you need to create your own file. You need to create your own config file, or you need to create your own dictionary to indicate, okay, what's my user, what's my password, what's my Snowflake account, all the bunch of those parameters you have to give to yourself, right, manually. But but I don't need to do this in here because I'm already on Snowflake and Streamlit has already been integrated with Snowflake. So all I need to do is just create this, right? Session equals get active session. So this is telling me, okay, what type of user role database you're on currently at the moment to work on, right? So this will, save all the hustle. So what I would do is get the session here, right? So get active session. So this is something that's very important to know, okay, which environment you're currently working on, right? So let me just delete this part here. We'll use this layout down the line. So the first thing I would do is, even if you look at the question, so what's telling us to do? You see this bit here, right? So we don't need to do all that. We don't need to create our secrets. We don't need to enter your username, password, account, etc. You don't need all that. So because I'm currently working on the Snowflake worksheet under my account anyway, right? So why do I need to specify my username or password again? So the first thing what we do is call this function. So I'm going to do here is load data, right? Something like this. So let me quickly see again. So I would create a function, right? Something like this. And don't forget to cache this, right? Something like this. Yeah, like this. Similar to what we have in here, right? The skeleton. So what I would do is first I would say session equals get active session, something like this, right? So this is the indication that load data, this function we will write a SQL function on that, right? We will write a SQL statement, right? So this is the function, and within the function, we will create a SQL statement to invoke a data frame, right? So in order to do that, you need this session, right? Because you need this in order to, let's say, to, write down some SQL code, right? I would do something like this, and the next step I would do is session.sql, right? So what you're going to do is in Python in here, just give us 3 literals, right? And you can just write any SQL statement within the body. So I'm going to say select, something similar to what we've got here, right? Just going back to the worksheet, I'm just going to copy down this and paste in here, right? Yes, make it more neat. Something like this. Yeah, thing something like this. What I'm gonna do instead of payments, I'm just say frosty.public.payments, right? So I'm gonna do something like this. So this is basically similar to what we've got in here, right, in the worksheet, right? So I want to invoke something like this, but as a data frame, right? Here, so I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do is you have to declare a data frame. So I'm just call this as df underscore, let's say payments truncated data. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be the same as what you've written, but just a simple name, right? Just going to do something like this. Okay, that's done. And I'm going to do, because bear in mind that this here is a snowpark object, right? Like a snowpark data frame. Snowpark data frame, right? But if you want to, let's say, convert this into a pandas data frame, what you want to do is, it's going to do something like this, right? df. So I'm just going to call this, let's just call this df result payments. Yeah. So I'm just going to call this df payments trunk date, right? Similar to this. This bit here is going to be similar to this, but you write 2 pandas, right? And then what I'm going to do is return df result payments here, right? Okay, something like this. So this is one function done, right? So why did I just do this? Why did I just convert this to a pandas data frame? Don't we have a snowpark data frame? Yes, that's correct. We have a snowpark data frame. This SQL, right? Session.sql, session is given from here. This session.sql, this is basically a SQL statement that converts into a snowpark data frame. But why did we convert the snowpark data frame to pandas? Just bear in mind, in order to invoke your StreamLit application, you have to use pandas data frame to do that. You cannot use a snowpark data frame. You have to use a pandas data frame. So this is one of the reasons why once you create a SQL object and then convert it to a snowpark data frame, you have to convert it back to pandas and you return the result set, right? So how do I see the result set here? What I would do is, because this is on a function, and this function, it's, look, you can clearly see, look, if I just do something like this, it says it returns a pandas data frame. So what I would do here is load data. Let me see, load data, something like this, because we know this is a pandas data frame, right? So if I just run this here, okay, I've got an error. Cache command underscore data. Okay, I think it's outdated, so I'm going to just say underscore data here. Run. Okay, let me see. Data. Okay. What we'll do here is, okay, so return the data frame, right? So we know load data function returns a data frame, pandas data frame. I'm just going to call this, let's say, df result payments. I'm not sure why just having this. Okay, that's fine. And then here, it's going to do payments, right? Okay, I can see the table here. You can clearly see the table, right? This table is similar to the one we have in here, right? Hold on, let me quickly check something here. Me just putting on load data is not working well. Okay, I think if I use st.write load data, let me see. Okay, it's working. Okay, make sure that just by writing load data, it's not going to give you results. It's a function, right? So make sure it's just st.write load data. But this bit works here, right? So I would do something similar to this as well. I would say st.write payments. Remember, we're not going to use a print statement, right? We're going to uh, use StreamLit's function st.write in order to mimic this as a print statement, right? So I can just delete this bit here. Run. Okay, we got this, right? Df result payments, which is this data frame here, equals load data, right? And then I just set st.write df result payments. And we can see the data frame here, right? So the one on the right, you can see here, the one on the right is going to be a Streamlit web application. The one on the left is going to be your editable code, right? To build up your application here, right? So, okay, we got this done. So what's the next thing? So I've got payment date. I've got payment week, the starting week, and the card type, right? So let's see what's next. If we just go back to here. Let's see. Got this done. Okay, this may be a bit complicated to read, but all you have to do is something like this. Something simple to begin with, right? So this is easier to understand, right? So just going back to the second. Okay, second and third function is to get the minimum date and get the maximum date. So I'm just gonna do that here, right? Get min date. So I'm just gonna create a function called df get min date. Right. Okay, and then I'm just gonna create the similar thing, max date. Okay, make sure if you write a function, don't forget to colon on the end, right? So I'm gonna say return df results payment, right? Just gonna copy paste in here. So what I'm gonna do is get the minimum date. So if you see here in the question, look at the picture above. The minimum date is 28th of December 2020, and the maximum is 27th of December 2021. So we need to make sure that we get those two results, right? So let's just see this in here. Let's see. You can see after even pressing on payment week here, I can clearly see the minimum is 28th of December 2020, yeah, and the maximum is 27th of December 2021, right? Which is exactly the same here. So yeah, I think that clearly works, right? So in order to write this down here is, okay, I want to get the column called payment underscore week, right? So this is the data frame. I'm choosing one column, which is payment underscore week. And then what I'm doing is I'm just going to get the minimum, as you say min, right? And then similar to this bit here, just going to do copy and paste in here, but instead of min, we say max, right? So if you just run this, of course it won't work because I haven't invoked that yet. So look at this bit here, yeah? So if I just comment out these two, yeah? And then I want to invoke saying get min date, right? I'm just going to say st.write get min date, right? It says name df result payment is not defined. The one thing here is, look at this bit here, results payment. This is within this function. But how am I going to use this data frame across all multiple functions? How can I say, okay, look what it says here. This result data frame is not even defined. So what you want to do is, after writing this function, or if you ask yourself the question, okay, I need to get the minimum date for this data frame, have this always outside the function, right? So this is important. Make sure you don't comment this bit out, right? So if you have this, you can use this data frame across multiple functions. So you can say return this data frame, payment week, minimum, maximum, etc., right? So make sure that, let's say you have loaded the data, you got the table, right? After doing this, just say something like this straight after the first function, because you can reuse that data frame across multiple functions, right? Let me just run this now. Oh, I can see here, 28th of December 2020, right? I'm just going to do similar to get max date, something like this. 27th, okay, cool. Got min day, payment week, min. Okay, let me quickly see something. If I just put the date here. Okay. Not work. Okay, that's fine. It's been already because it's already as a date, right? So we don't need to do that. Okay. All right, cool. We got those two happy days, right? Now, what's the next one? So even if you look at back to the skeleton script here, it tells us to use something like this: minimum payments, df, index to list, date. I mean, this may be a bit complicated to read, but this is much more easier to read, right? Having this is so much easier, right? And I think that's all done, right? So let me see if I've got everything I need. I think we're missing the last statement here, right? App creation. So that's where we're going to build our front end, right? So I'm going to go back to here and say call the last function, def app creation, right? So this is basically going to be our main method, right? So in here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some comments down, right? I think it has inserted field comment, create a title here. So I'm just going to say write a title, right? Something like that. So the first thing I would do is just going to write a title here, right? So the way we do that is StreamLit has got a function called title, right? I'm just going to say, let me do it one quote. It doesn't matter if it's a single quote or double quote. So I'm just going to say payments, payments in 2021. I think this is what it's called here, right? Let's open up this payments in 2021. Okay, cool. So if you just run this, right? So you can't run this because it's wrapped around with a function. So if you just run this, you can't see anything, right? But even you got a title, you can't see anything because you haven't invoked the function yet. Just try, if you want to invoke the function, you say app creation, something like this, right? Now look, payments in 2021. So we got the first thing here, payments in 2021, right? So what's the next one here? So if you see the Python skeleton script, we have, okay, I've got the title. We have to create a slider for both, right? So the way I would do it is, okay, we got the title. I'm just going to say, let's comment, create slider for min date first, right? Because we have to create sliders for both, right? If you look at to this, we have to create a slider for the minimum date and we have to create a slider for the maximum date, right? So going back to here, create slider for minimum date. So what I would do is I would just call it as min, let's say date slider, something, right? It doesn't have to be exactly the same. So Streamlit got a function called slider, right? So open up the parenthesis and then you have to give, look how many built-in functions it has, right? So if you're going to choose, let's say the first thing is, I would have a label, right? Just call it, let's say select a min date, right? So if you see here, Streamlit got a function called slider, so it says select a min date. The reason why I've written select a min date is this is your label, right? Select a min date. You can do something like this as well. Here, label equals, you can do the same thing. It is a bit optional, right? Okay, select a min date. Next, I would say, it's going to give us a minimum value. So I would do is copy get min date in here. So the reason why is, remember we have seen that get min date is actually 28th of December 2020, whereas the maximum date is 27th of December 2021, right? It's gonna do that, and then it's gonna do max value, get max date, right? All I'm doing is copy and pasting the function, right? Because the function just returns, see here, it says returning, it's not saying here, but okay, that's fine. It's just returning it, just the date, right? So I'm just gonna do get max date, minimum, maximum, and then what you have to put a value here, because if you see here, the way we're going to build the slider is, okay, we got the label called select min date, we got the minimum value here, we got the maximum value, but by default, what's been selected is the minimum here, right? So that's where you say, let's just call it default value here, right? Default value is going to be a minimum date. So I'm just going to copy and paste in here. And then I think that's pretty much, right? Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I'm just going to run this. So I'm just going to check if it's actually working. So the way I'm going to do that is def app creation. Just run that. Okay, so now I'm going to extract value keyword with def value. Okay, let me see. It's called def value. It's called value. Let me see. Let me see if it's called value. Oh, it's called value. Okay, sorry. So if you see here, okay, we got the label, which is select the min date, min value, max value, the value. It's not called a def value. It's just called the value. You have many others, right? Key on change, some formatting, keys, etc. Right? So I'm just gonna use those for selected. Let me just call this label. It's easier to read. Okay, let's run this. Okay, we got our first slider, right? So you can clearly see that it says select a min date, similar to what we have here. The minimum value is, of course, 28th of December 2020, and the maximum is 27th December 2021. And by default, it has been selected the min date, if you see here, right? And what else we could do here is just, I'm just going to do something very optional. You don't have to do that. So I'm just going to say help. I'm just going to say something like this. Use this to slide to select the minimum date, something like that, right? So if I just run this, you can see there's the icon, right? Like helps type of icon saying use the slide to select the minimum date. You don't actually need to do that, right? Because in the question, it didn't tell us to do it. So we got exactly the same as the first one here, right? Now let's just do similar to the maximum date. So what I'm going to do here is just going to copy, paste underneath. Let's call it max date slider. Select a max date, right? I think it's just what it's called, select max date. Is it select? Oh, it's not. It's called select min date, not select a min date. Select min date, select max date. Use the slide to select the maximum date. And here, if you see here, the min value and max is exactly the same. But by default, it has the maximum value being selected, right? So it's gonna do, instead of saying get min date in here, it's gonna say get max date, right? And then it's gonna run this. You see, you can clearly see what's going on here, right? So if you have select min date, which is the first one here, and select max date. So by default, it's already been selected. It's not something similar to the first one because I've mentioned the value to get max date by default. So once you run this, so if I just put something like this and run, right? Let me see. Let me think. Let me see here. It's not really working, but that's fine. I mean, you get the picture, right? So even if I run this, the value has been already selected is the last one here, right? The maximum date. And yeah, I think that's how you build sliders, right? Pretty much self-explanatory, really. But all you need to know is, get the label, the minimum value, the maximum, the value is been selected, and this is pretty much optional, right? But you can add this whenever you want, right? Now, the next step would be, if you see here, I can select the min date like this, and the max date to be less than the min date. But this doesn't actually make sense, right? Because I want the min date. Let's say if I select this as 1st of May, I want this to be selected just before 1st of May, or even inclusive, right? Like this, right? So I don't want someone to choose something like this, right? This doesn't actually make sense. This makes sense, but not this, right? So I'm just going to do some filtering here. So what I'm going to do is, okay, the next step is going to build the date filter, right? It's going to say build the date filter. So it's going to do here is it's going to say date filter, yeah, something like that. Now our data frame, right? So like this. It's gonna say the payment. Let me just quickly see this bit here. Payment date, right? This is a date. Let's just say, because you're not scrolling across from the week date, you're scrolling across for the payment date, right? So I'm gonna say payment date, right? Is between the minimum. So if you just copy here, paste into between this, comma, max date slider, right? And then what I'm going to do is just set this to inclusive equals both, right? Something like this. Okay, what am I doing here? So I'm creating a date filter that is between the minimum date slider, which is this bit here, and between from minimum and the maximum, right? So the reason why I said inclusive is set to both is for the between command, we have the parameter inclusive is to determine whether the endpoints of the range are included in the comparison, right? So if I set this to both, that means the minimum and the maximum value specified are included in the comparison. And that also means the value is equal, right? The minimum is equal to the maximum will also be included in your filtered result set, right? So pretty much it provides, flexibility in how you define your filtering criteria, right? So if I set this to both, in my line chart I will be able to create the next few minutes or so, I'll be able to see the result set. If I just set to something like this, I'll be able to see a chart. But if I set something like this, right, I will have an empty result set, right? So anything below the maximum date, I'll be able to see something. So that's how I see it. So this is why this is a bit more very important. So what I'm gonna do is so we got this, and then so if you want to see how this actually looks like, it's going to do app creation. So you see, okay, hold up. Let's do right. Okay, let me just do date filter, right? Okay, this is look. You see here, this is like a boolean, right? This is not really a data frame, right? This is just okay. It's just telling me it's a date filter, right? Between this and this. So this is of course the return statement is going to be a boolean. But I cannot really work with this type of data anyway. It's just giving me a set of yes or no's, right? So all I'm going to do is apply this filter into our data frame, right? So I'm just going to say apply filter into data frame, right? So I'm just going to do something like this. So I'm going to call it, let's say, filtered payments, let's go df. So I'm going to do here, and then it's going to include this as a column, right? Something like this. So basically what I did is, okay, I've got this set here, this column here. I want to apply this into my data frame, right? So I'm going to do here is st.write filtered payments df, right? So running this, so you can clearly see I've got a data frame here right now. So this has been applied. You can see set of numbers of the results set that we've got right for this date filter, which is between this and this, right? So what I'm gonna do here, so you can clearly see, look at this. The reason why we did this is, okay, I've got my filtering, and I filtered this by 29th of August, which is the minimum, and the maximum is on the 13th September. Now while running this, I've got a data set something like this. So if you see the payment date, the minimum is 29th of August, and the maximum is 13th. So if I just change this to something like this, look, I've got empty results because this doesn't actually make sense. Why would you have the minimum date be larger than the maximum date? So if I just put on the same, so you see, inclusive, right? So of course, I set this as both. So therefore, that means, okay, I can see the result set, right? You just set to both. And yeah, I think you can just play around with it when you see the data change. I don't even need to press run. This is just automatically changing for me, right? So this is good. So that's why you need to build your date filter and apply the date filter into the data frame in order to make sure whatever the user is doing with the sliders, the table will automatically be changed in sync, right? Now we got that out of the way. What I would do is, okay, I've got the filter payments df, so I don't need that no more. I'm just going to run this. Okay, I've got something like this. I don't think I need the other data frame. I'm just going to delete this part here. I'm just going to run. Okay, I've got those two, similar to this, right? So the next one is, probably the last one, is going to be a line chart, right? So what I'm going to do here is, what we're going to do here is, okay, first things first. So in order to create a line chart, yeah. So if you see here, we got filtered payments df, right? So if I do something like this, so StreamLit got a function called line chart, right? So if I just do this, I'm just going to say, okay, I'm just going to do filtered payments df. I'm just going to do that, right? So it's going to run this, right? Command stream has not a boot. Hold up. The line chart is not on StreamLit. Oh, my bad. It's line underscore chart. Yeah, something like this. Look at this. This is quite messy, right? I see what I've just done here. This is quite messy. And just bear in mind that if I just put right filtered payments df, right? Just run this. Okay, I got something like this. So the reason why this is a bit messy is, look at how many columns I've got. I've got 3 columns, right? Just bear in mind, in order to create a line chart, yeah, what a lot of people tend to do is, okay, I've got my filtered payments. I look into this. I say, okay, I can just start creating my line chart. But this becomes very messy. First, if you look into this line chart, what are your x-axis? What are your y-axis, right? Can't really tell the picture, right? If you just scroll up here, in order to create a line chart, make sure your data frame has maximum of 2 columns. Yeah. How would you create a line chart with 3 columns? It doesn't make sense. You have an x-axis and a y-axis, so make sure it has 2. So in order to do that, right? So this don't work, right? I would do just probably create a data frame that contains the rows that are grouped based on the unique combination of values, right? For example, if you look at back of the question, so if you see the x-axis, it's going to be your payment week, right? And the amount spent is going to be your y-axis, right? So in order to use the line chart, so you need, in order to create a line chart, again, you need 2 columns, right? Your x-axis and the y-axis. So going back to the question here, going back to the worksheet, what I would do is, even if you look at the question below, it says here, you should have a line chart with dates on the x-axis and the amount on the y-axis, right? It's pretty much month on the dates, right? So the data should be aggregated at the weekly level. So here, going back to here, I'm just going to do something like this. Let's say, I'm just going to add the comment here, group the filtered data frame for the line chart, right? Something like this. Because this is messy, and again, these has 3 columns, and you cannot create a line chart like that, right? Just going to say grouped, just call a group df, right? So here, what I'm going to do is, so I need this no more. Just going to copy and paste into here. So I'm just going to use the same data frame as the one above. Just going to say group by. Just going to group by the payment week, right? Just going to group by payment week, and then it's going to group this by let's say amount spent, let's say amount spent, but just make sure you group by sum, right? Summation. Because the reason why the summation is, okay, if you see, look into this, you don't even get the 4th column here, right? Filter payments, day filter. Okay, that's fine. So if you're going to look into this, we have card type, we have payment day week, card type. Okay, so I'm just going to do something like this. If you scroll down, so look at this, these values here, right? So this is not the same as what we got here. Look, it goes up to 1 million, right? So make sure you get 2 columns in order to create a line chart, right? So let me just do st.write group df, right? Just run this. Let's see. Okay, let me just quickly see. Data frame has object now. Group by. Oh, it's lowercase b. Okay. Payment week. What did? Oh, should be. Make sure it's all in capital, yeah. Well, exactly is case sensitive, right? So here it says because it's a payment week. It's going to payment week and amount spent. Let me quickly see if I have amount spent here. Card type. Oh, I don't have amount spent in here. Hold up. Okay, the amount spent is missing. Okay, I think I forgot to put amount spent in here. Card type, date. Oh yeah, I forgot to put amount type in here. Oh, that's fine. Amount type. Right, this is of course. Is it called amount spent? Sorry, not amount type. Amount spent. My bad. Okay, amount spent, right? So I think I forgot to include that here. Okay. Amount spent. Okay, cool. I've got this. Payment week. I've got this layers. Amount spent, sum. Okay, now you can clearly see what's going on, right? It's going up to 1 million. So because I've changed this, so I just keep changing like this. So the data set will enlarge it, right? So depending on the difference between the minimum date and maximum date, right? So we got amount spent, and looking into this, figures to st.write filtered payments. Just go df, right? Just got something like this, right? So we can see the whole table. And remember what I've said here is the st._line chart and filter payment, because it contains more than 2 columns, right? Here, you can see here we got an error message saying the columns used for rendering the chart contain too many values with mixed types, right? You can see it's 2 values with mixed types. The reason why you've seen probably like a messed up line chart is because payment date and payment week are exactly the same types, and card type is text. Because I forgot to include amount spent. That's why you see a line chart being produced for you. But this is also incorrect. You shouldn't have, let's say, 3 columns. You should have 1 column for x-axis and the other column for y-axis, right? So because this contains 3 different data types, the line chart won't be able to create, right? So it says please select the columns manually where the y parameter, right? So we've got, if we just delete this part here, I'm just gonna delete those two. st.write group df. So I've got my x-axis, which is payment week, and the y-axis being amount spent, right? This is what exactly we need to see. Now, once that's done, I'm going to say create, let's say draw the line chart, right? Just going to delete this. It's going to do st.line chart grouped df. Yeah, simple like this. Run. Of course, something like this, right? I think this is this similar to the one. I think it looks quite similar, right? I think, yeah, it could. I mean, it looks decent enough to be fair, right? Looks quite similar. And yeah, I think this is how you do it, right? So st line chart. So make sure again with the summation, it should be only have 2 columns, right? In order to create a line chart. So I think that's all pretty much. And also one more thing we forgot is the legend here, the key, just amount spent. How do you want me to do that? Let me see. Create legend. I'm not sure if Stream has like a function line chart. So I'm not sure. Let me see. Use height. It doesn't have. I don't think it has a legend. What's this? No, it's something else. Okay, well, I think I can do something else. Just saying, gonna say color picker, right? And say amount spent. Amount spent here is you give a hex code, right? So the hex code for what color is this? I mean, I know it's blue, but what type of blue is this? Is it probably like royal blue or something, right? Just gonna see 6. Let me see 1. Right, this is a hex code for royal blue. You can just look it up. Just Google something like, okay, I just want to see the hex code for royal blue. Something like this. Just run this. Okay, I'm on spend royal blue, right? So if we go back to this, I mean, it's of course different compared to what I got, but I mean, I'm happy with the answer, right? So I can't really remember how to create a legend using the line chart. So yeah, I just use color picker. So yeah, this is how we create a line chart, right? So I'm happy with the answer. So looking back into what we have done here is first we imported the libraries. We used our first initial function to create our table, but just make sure when you create a table, it should be a static table because you used this decorator here, right? In order to, re-execute the function multiple times, right? Because it's going to be a static anyway. So, and then here we used to turn the data frame. I just remember we just converted the Snowpark data frame into a pandas data frame because StreamLit will only work using pandas data frame. And then what we did is, okay, in order to use this within the min date function and max date function, I want to call this outside the function load data, right? So that's what I've done now here. And then what I'm going to do is, okay, I've got the minimum date, I've got the maximum date, min and max. That gets me the minimum date and maximum. And then I've got a function called app creation. So what I've done here is I've got the title, I've got the minimum date slider, so with the label, min val, max val, volume help, similar to maximum date slider. And then what I've done is just, build the date filter here, right? Build the date filter, apply the date filter into the date frame. And in order to build the line chart, you need 2 columns. And then, yeah, I think that's all pretty much. And then I've got the legend here. So I'm happy with the answer. So if you guys have any questions regarding what I've built here, just let me know in the comments below, and I will get back to you once that's done. And then yeah, I'm happy with this, and this gives you an idea on how to create StreamLit, right? I think this is a difficulty of basic, so quite a good task. So for you to understand how StreamLit works, and yeah, I think if you've got any questions, just let me know in the comments. And Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.